Here is a sequence. Let's begin and enjoy. So this position is actually called constructive rest. And the idea is that, there's no pressure in the legs or the body or the pelvis. Sometimes when people have the knees bent, they have a tendency for the knees to drop out, which is why often you could put a belt around the thighs just to hold those femur bones parallel. And then the arms just cross over the chest, and you can play with, they need to be a little bit higher. You can play with that. It's wherever that relaxation comes in, or a little bit lower. So you just don't want to, you can sort of soften your hands around the shoulders, or you can just try to really allow the fingers to soften here and the shoulders to soften. So you can imagine the whole back side of the body just curving around the spine, so that when you breathe, you're just breathing into that cavity of coming around the back body to the front, coming up through, and then as you exhale, it can go down, and you can imagine it coming around and back to the spine. So as you inhale, you have this coming around up through the front body. As you exhale, it goes down and around. And you can really try to see if you can imagine each of those sides of the vertebrae. Just there's these little edges on the side of the vertebrae that when somebody just softens their fingers in there can feel quite lovely. And you can imagine when you're breathing as if somebody's got fingertips, so they're just combing around that part of the spine, through the rib cage and through the shoulders. And then you can inhale, bring the breath just around and up, and exhale, it comes down and around back into the spine. So and see if you can really find that softness in the shoulder blades. And one of the images you can do here is imagine that there's a sponge between your shoulder blade and your back, and so that when you inhale, it's really filling with water, so that can create a little space. So see if you can imagine these sponges between your shoulder blades and your back, so that they really fill up with water and really spread into that. And as you exhale, it softens, so that you're starting to create space between the shoulder blades. And then release this position, and because we're already down here, we'll just do a nice stretch with the arms, so you can bring the right elbow under the left into Guru Dasana arms, and then you can stretch them over your head to feel where the stretch goes. I can actually reach my hands down here, but if you can only bring the hands here, bring the hands to your shoulders, and then stretch it up, and then you can stretch it down. If you've got the hands here, you can really lift over, and then you can really bring it down. Oh, I got a nice crack between my shoulder blades, so you might too. It feels actually very good. So just a little gentle movement of stretching it overhead, and and then bringing it down. And then release the arms and bring the left elbow under the right. And if you need to keep the palms on your shoulders, you do it this way. You stretch it towards the forehead and then down towards the chest. Or if you can hold as much of the arms as possible, even if you have to have a little space between the arms, you can stay here and do this lifting and lowering. So if you can do the full one, you can really squeeze the arms together and lift them overhead and then bring them down and overhead and bring them down. And then release the arms. And we're going to take the right ankle over the left thigh so it goes towards the knee. And you can either take the hands just behind the thigh, or if you want, you can bring them on your shin. But you don't want to bring the knee up towards the chest. You want to have the knee away from your shoulder. So we're getting a bit of an outer hip stretch here. And if my hands are underneath my thigh, I can take my elbow and press it into the inner thigh. So you're trying to bring that shin towards the chest. That's the goal. Or I should say that's the direction. That's the direction of movement, not necessarily the goal. And then release that side, and then bring the left ankle over the right and bring the hands either to the thigh or the shin, keeping the knee away from the shoulder. And if you have the elbow there, you can press that into the thigh. And then slowly release. So you've got the feet on the floor. You can bring your hands down next to your hips. And then you can inhale the knees into the chest. Really extend through the heels up, bending the knees in towards the chest, softening the feet down to the ground. So inhale, straighten. Exhale, bend down. Then you can also change the arms and bring them under your head, and or you can also, if you want more intensity, bring them overhead. So whatever suits you. But most of the action is in the abdominals and also through the legs. So you really soften the legs down. You don't like drop them down. You soften the legs down and then bend and straighten. And then do 2 more of these. And then bring the legs down and bring the right leg up and straighten that leg. And then you can either hold the thigh or the shin, trying to get some stretch behind the hamstring. Then you're gonna take the opposite leg, the left leg, and try to really push out through the heel. It may be difficult to get that leg back down on the floor, but see if you can do it. And then you can slowly bend that leg up. and then slowly stretch it down. And then release that leg, bend both knees in down to the floor. And then bend the other knee, so it's my left side, but you might be on the other leg. And just straighten that where you can. So you really press through that heel to open the backs of the leg. And then if you want, you can just put your hands, interlock the fingers around the thigh or the hamstring. Or if you have a little more flexibility, you can bring it on the calf muscle. And then you're slowly straightening, the opposite leg out. And then slowly slide that leg back in. Maybe you can get a little more stretch behind the leg. And then again, slowly straighten that leg out. Hold it for a few breaths. And then bend the legs in. You can put the feet on the floor if you want to press up the heels and just shake out the pelvis. And then you can roll over to your side and come up to all fours. And we're gonna swing the right foot between the hands. You can put your fingertips here and just swing that right foot there. This is where, if you need some softness, you can put something like your towel under your knee. And then you bring the hands on the thigh. And we'll start straight up. So you're in this 90-degree angle. You want to have the hips as even as possible. And then you're going to slowly lunge forward. Really need to keep lifting the abdominals. And with your hands here on the thigh, you can keep the chest open, really press down with a bit of weight into that thigh. But you want to make sure you're not elevating the shoulders or rolling them forward. You want to keep that chest lifting forward. And then slowly take the fingertips on the side of the leg and you just swing that back so you're into all fours. And then with the fingertips up, you can swing the left leg through, hands up on that thigh, and really engage those abdominals. And then slowly press forward, lifting that chest. And really pressing some weight into those hands. So it's a good idea to be conscious of which hand is on top so that we're doing the opposite. So with my left leg forward, my left leg is on the bottom, left leg. My left hand is on the bottom, my right hand is on top. And then I come into a bit of a lunge. And then I come up, bring the fingertips down, swing the leg back, and I spread my hands down under my shoulders. And I'm going to tuck the toes under and come into downward facing dog. So you may have to walk the hands a little more forward or walk the feet back a little bit, just to find that sweet spot of your positioning in downward facing dog. And you can play around with it a little bit. What if you bring the feet more forward? That's more of a shorter dog. I guess we have short dog and long dog. And then if you bring the feet, you don't want to bring the feet too far back, but you can still play with, what if you go way far back? Can you get a little bit more through the armpits here? And then bring the knees down and go into big toes together, knees wide. And you can really walk those hands forward so that you can get length through those sit bones and find that stretch through the arms. Pressing in those shin bones, tops of the feet. And we're going to try some poses through downward dog, where it's really nice to have blocks, but it can be done without blocks. So I'll demonstrate before we begin the series of them. But with blocks, it just gives you a little bit more lift. So how we're going to do it is you're going to be in downward dog, then you bend the legs and you jump 1 foot forward, and then you'll extend the back foot long, and then I'll take you into some poses. But if you don't have the blocks, do the best that you can with the hands on the mat. So come into the downward dog and find that sweet spot if you can, and then jump the right foot forward if you can, and then extend that left leg long behind you, and then come into triangle pose. I love doing these with the block, but if you don't have the block, I guess I'll show you poses both with and without the blocks. And then if you want, the top arm can come up. You can bring it up. And if you're okay in the head and the neck, you begin that twist from the abdominals to then bring the head to look up to the top hand. Now to come back out of pose, you're going to bend the front leg. You're going to lift the back foot up and jump back into downward dog. Now again, if you can't do this, you can do more stepping and see how you go. And then for the second side, I'm going to jump my left foot forward, and then I'm going to extend my right leg long behind me and come up into Utthita Trikonasana, extended triangle pose. And then if you can engage those abdominals, turn and look to the upper hand. Because your torso is actually in a bit of a twist there. So you really want to be engaging those lower abdominals. So then you turn around, bend that front leg, and you lift the back leg up, kick it up to then jump into downward facing. And then have a couple of breaths here, or you can go down, big toes together, knees wide. I'll do the second one with blocks, so I could show you how the blocks work in this pose. So come into a downward facing dog. And again, you want to get that sweet spot between the hands and the feet that feels right to you. And then I'm going to bend the knees and jump the right foot between the blocks, and then take that left leg long behind me, and I'm going to come into Parsvakonasana. So if you have the blocks here, you can actually keep a hand on the block and go into it this way. You can still put your forearm on the thigh. But if you have your block here, you can come into it this way. And then wherever the arm needs to go today, you're okay in the neck, you can look under the armpit. And then you pivot around, and with the hands on the block, you still lift that back leg up, kick it up, and bring the other leg behind. And remember, you can always step if you need to. Then bend the knees again and jump the left foot forward and the right foot long behind you. And either the forearm can come on the thigh, or you can use the block, and then the arm can be up or down or up and over. And then you can bring both hands back on the block, kick the leg up, and jump back into downward facing dog. You can stay in downward dog for a few breaths, or go into big toes together, knees wide. And then come up again and come into downward dog. I like using the blocks for the next pose because it's very helpful. But anyway, if you don't have them, don't worry about it. Come into downward facing. And this time, as you bend the knees and you jump that foot forward, this time you're going to lead the back leg up. So as you lift that leg up, straighten the bottom leg. And you know, you can stay this way if you're having balancing issues, or you can slowly try to unfurl that top arm up and come into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. And then to come out, you bring the hands around, you kick up the back leg, jump back into downward facing dog. And then you bend the knees, jump the left foot forward. And then you're slowly lifting the back leg up, straighten the bottom leg. You can stay with the hands down if you need to, working on the legs, or the top arm can come up. And then bring the hands back, kick that leg up, coming into downward dog, staying there, or going in big toes together, knees wide. And then I'll be nice and put the blocks off to the side and show one without the blocks. And slowly come into downward facing dog. This time bend the knees and jump the right leg forward. Now this time you're going to take the back leg, and you can really see what's going on in the relationship with your feet so that the left toes are pointed forward. Then you can walk the hands up the shin and come into Purvottanasana. And wherever your body is, you can even have the hands here on the thigh. Or you can have them on the hips, trying to work the hips so you can straighten those legs. And then you'll bend that front leg, kick the back foot up and bring that foot to meet it. A couple of breaths here. And then bend the knees, jump the left foot forward. And then just make sure those toes are turned in. So you don't want the hips swinging out. You want the hips right underneath you. And then you can walk the hands up the thigh, just like we did earlier in the lunge. And come forward here. And then bend that front leg. Kick the back leg up and bring the front leg to meet it. A couple of breaths here, or go down and have a few breaths into big toes together, knees wide. So come in and sit in Dandasana. Sit with the feet up. And when we sit in Dandasana, you really need to use the thighs, and then see if you can imagine those little toes really coming back so that your feet are not sickling. So that would mean that they go kind of like this. So if we sit here and get that lift, and that's why you want more underneath your sit bones if you tend to lean back a little bit. Now I'm exaggerating movements just to kind of show you that. And then we're gonna do easy cross legs to start with. So bend the knees, put the left shin behind the right. Bring the hands on the thighs, because this is a nice way to get some weight here. And you're trying to keep the ankles open so the feet are like flexed to the outer edge of the mat. And then here you can start to walk the hands forward. And you can just stay here if that works for you. If you want to go deeper, you can really pull on the mat, lift the chest forward, walk the hands more. And you can do this a couple of breaths. You know, you can stay for a few breaths, get your body used to it, and walk the hands a little further, lift the chest up, and then soften the forehead forward. And then inhale, slowly coming up. Bringing the knees up, extending the legs long. Hands next to you. Really extending through those legs so that this pose is not just a resting pose. It's actually a lifted pose. You can sit here for a while and really work on the strength of your legs, really work on the verticality from your pelvis up to your head, from your sit bones up. And then bend the knees again. Place the left shin in front of the right, or the right shin behind the left. Whichever way you think easier. And have the hands on the thighs, just to weight the thighs down to the ground, to feel that weightedness. And then you can start to walk the hands forward. And again, like the other side, you can stay a few breaths wherever you need, however you need to start. If you need to start right here, start right here. And then you can walk a hand forward, like a palm length forward, and press the hands, lift the chest up. Just see where you are today. And then at the last little while, you can soften the forehead down. And then slowly walk the hands back up. Bring the knees up And then straighten through the legs into Dandasana staff pose. Now, again, we're going to bend the knees, place the left one down. Now, might be a little more challenging for you, but where you can start with this is just the little rocking the baby of opening the hips. I used to do this when I taught kids because they love things like that. And then if you can place that ankle on the knee, it's called fire log pose. But if you need it, like here, that's okay too. So if you need to lift that knee up, that's fine because it's wherever your hip is. You could also take a block or a pillow and put it underneath, something like this for support if that's what you need. So those are some options depending on your hips. And again, bring the hands to the thighs if you can, wherever you are in this pose. And then again, you can start to walk the hands forward. You may not be able to go as far, and that's okay. It's all about letting the hips soften, not about forcing. It's never about pushing and forcing. It's just trying to see where you are. After a few breaths, you might be able to go a little bit further into the stretch. And then inhale, slowly come up and bring the knees up. There's another trick you can do that I'll show you sometime if you need to keep your knee open by using a belt. So sometime when we're doing this, something like this again, I'll show you that little technique. And then straighten the legs out. You may need to rock back and forth on your sit bones a little bit. Hands next to you, getting that lift in the chest. Then bend the knees again and place the right shin down, and then holding the left leg, rocking the baby. I mean, there's different ways you can do it. You can bring your hands through and kind of do that as well, but it just depends on your body. So there's something really nice about just rocking the baby, opening up that hip, that thigh socket a bit more, or that stretching underneath here, and then bringing that foot down. And again, if you need more height, you put a pillow underneath the knee or a block. Like if you needed to go this high with this pose, and maybe this leg is like this too, you can put something there and you can put something here. So don't feel like you have to look like me. And then bring the hands onto the thighs. And then slowly walk the hands forward. And a couple of breaths wherever you can land today in this pose. Slowly walking the hands up, stretching the backs of the legs here. And we'll see how we go. You know, we got a few minutes. We're just gonna try a little bit of this pose is nice if you have two belts, because most of the time most of us can't hold our toes, both toes together, but you can put your hands on your thigh. So see if you can hold the right toe and just bring it back. And if you can't hold the left toe, while you do this. We're going into the archer pose, but I don't know if I'm open enough to do this fully, but, or at least I can try to hold on to my toes and I can come here. So we'll just do it here. Just keep those shoulders open. Eventually the foot is out here, but right now we're just gonna do it this far today. And then slowly bring that forward. And one day we'll work on a class where we try to do this pose more fully. So it's holding the big toes, but you can, like I said, bring the hands to the shins, but it's nice to hold the big toe to bring it back and just bring it back to where it can go. Like I said, eventually it goes out here, but also you're holding on to this toe. So it is a little bit of a challenge. And then slowly bring that down and back to Dandasana. And just sit here for a few breaths. See if you can soften the forehead. And then take whatever you need today for Shavasana. It can be feet up the wall, feet in a chair. It can be pure Shavasana, just lying down flat. Arms next to you, feet come out. So that's one option. Or you can keep the knees bent or put something under your knees if you want a little more release in the lower spine. Or you can, like I said, feet up the wall or go into, put your legs up a chair. So whatever your pose you're in, just allow yourself to notice your spine as your spine is into whatever parts of your spine are on the mat, on the floor. See if you can imagine the edges on the outer part of the spine are softening. So we'll start in the pelvis, where whatever part of your pelvis is onto the floor, maybe it's on a pillow or feet up the wall. And see if you can imagine that sacrum really spreading and widening so that the bone is actually softening. Because while our bones give us support and they have weight to them, they're also malleable. They also have some softness to them. And then see if you can move up into the lumbar spine. Now that's where we have a natural curve. So you might not feel those vertebrae touching the floor, but see if you can imagine those vertebrae softening and widening. Sometimes it's really good to get a picture, like looking at a picture of what a vertebrae looks like, and then see if you can imagine just that space in those vertebrae. And then we'll move up to the larger part of your spine, which is your thoracic spine, which is behind your rib cage, and it goes up between your shoulder blades. And see if you can, if it's helpful, if you're trying to sense into all of those vertebrae, you can start right at the rib cage and kind of imagine your way up
those vertebrae, and they each soften. There's space between them. It's a bit like a pearl necklace, but there's space between them. And then as you move up into the shoulder blade area, you can feel the shoulder blades widening away from each other. And then we move up into the cervical spine, which is in your neck. And again, that's another curve where you are not going to feel your neck onto the floor. You're going to feel that natural curve. And see if you can imagine space on the sides of each of those vertebrae. And see if you can feel it as you come up towards the base of the head, the base of the skull. And up here we have the atlas and the axis that really supports the head on top of our cervical spine, on top of the whole spine, actually. And see if you can feel the base of the head softening. See if you can sense into all those bones in the head. Allow all the bones in the head to start to soften, including your jaw, the cartilage in your nose, the bones around your eye sockets, cheeks. And then slowly begin to deepen your breath. And you can stretch through your toes, your hands, your fingers, your feet, finding a little bit of movement. And then you can take a deep breath and really stretch the body before you come up and find your way as effortlessly as possible up to sitting. And thank you for coming. And again, with the hands in prayer position, you can say good thoughts, kind words, and heartfelt actions. Sometimes that reminder will help us remember throughout the day when we're struggling. So again, it's good thoughts, kind words, and heartfelt action. Thank you for being here. And namaste.